My name is Rachel Myers. I'm 37, the founder and CEO of a tech consultancy firm that has helped over 200 startups scale successfully. But according to my family, I'm just Josh's sister. Josh, my younger brother by 2 years, was the golden boy of the Myers household. Quarterback in high school, business major in college, and now a junior VP at my father's real estate company. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the girl who stayed up late coding in her bedroom, building websites while everyone else was watching sports. When I started Myers Consulting out of my one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, my parents didn't even ask what I did. "You should talk to your brother," my dad said once. "He might be able to get you a job." That was 5 years ago. Today, my company is valued at $42 million. We've been featured in Forbes, and our client list includes Fortune 500 companies. And yet, not a single mention at family dinners. Not even a "we're proud of you." Last month, Josh announced he was getting married. Big wedding, big venue, big guest list. Of course, IRSVPD. I still held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally acknowledge the woman I've become, the leader, the entrepreneur, the self-made success. I even brought someone I cared about, Dylan, a venture capitalist who believed in me when no one else did. I wore a tailored navy suit dress, minimalist but sharp, the kind that made you walk taller. The wedding venue was extravagant, marble floors, chandeliers, and servers in white gloves. I approached the hostess at the front desk. "Name?" she asked. "Rachel Myers," I said, +1. She scanned the tablet, then paused. "Ah yes. You've been placed at table 22. Her tone shifted, almost apologetic. Table 22 was tucked behind a curtain near the catering station. Close enough to hear the kitchen orders being shouted. Far enough from the head table that I could barely see the bride and groom. I didn't say anything. I sat down, smiled politely, ate my overpriced chicken breast. But something deep inside me was already shifting. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I was done being invisible. I didn't say anything at the wedding. Not during the awkward toasts. Not when Josh introduced Dylan as Rachel's friend who works in computers, completely ignoring his role as a partner at one of the most respected VC firms in the city. Not even when my father gave a speech thanking everyone who helped Josh become the man he is today, name-dropping his golf buddies, his college mentor, and my mother, but somehow forgetting to mention the sister who had written the business proposal that got Josh his first investor meeting. Me. That night, back at the hotel, Dylan turned to me as he untied his tie. "Do they always treat you like that?" I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Pretty much," I said. He sat on the edge of the bed, brows furrowed. "I don't understand how someone like you, smart, driven, respected, can be so invisible in a room full of people who owe half their reputations to your work." I shrugged, but something twisted in my chest. A tight, old ache. The next morning, I sat alone at the kitchen table in my parents' house, where I had stopped for coffee before the drive home. My mother stood across the counter, slicing fruit like she wasn't complicit in decades of emotional minimization. "You were quiet yesterday," she said, not looking up. I sipped my coffee. "I was thinking," I said. She glanced at me briefly. "It was Josh's day, sweetheart. You have to learn not everything is about you." That did it. For years, I'd accepted that script, internalized it, but something about the way she said it, so casual, so rehearsed, like I was a character in her domestic drama, finally broke the trance. I stood slowly, set my cup down. "You're right," I said calmly. "Not everything is about me. But my worth doesn't disappear just because it's not Josh's day." She blinked. I'd never spoken to her like that, not once. I grabbed my keys and left. No slam door, no raised voice. Just a woman finally setting the boundary her family never believed she would. I didn't know exactly what came next, but I knew I was going to write the next chapter of this story, on my terms. And it wasn't going to be quiet. The Monday after the wedding, I arrived at my office 30 minutes earlier than usual. I wanted the silence. I needed it. I walked the long hallway of my company, Rachel Logic, and paused in front of the glass conference room. The place where I had pitched to my first real client. Where I had once cried in frustration over an impossible deadline. And where, just last month, we closed our biggest deal to date. A $10 million contract with a global logistics firm that had once laughed at our cold emails. My name was on that door now. Etched in chrome. Rachel Myers, founder and CEO. I ran my fingers across it. Not to gloat. To remember. Because for so long, I thought success would be the thing that made them love me. Turns out, I was wrong. Success only matters when it fits into the story people want to tell, and in my family's story, I was always the hardworking daughter. The one who would make a great coup someday, never the face of the company, never the name on the press release. But in my story, I was both. Later that morning, during our weekly team meeting, I surprised everyone, including myself. I've decided to start a new initiative, I announced. We're launching a mentorship program for first-generation female founder. Tech, finance, education, I don't care what industry. I care that they feel invisible and need a seat at the table. There was a beat of silence. Then Kelly, my lead engineer, smiled. That sounds like you, she said. And that's when I knew. The change had already begun. It wasn't just about setting boundaries with my family anymore. It was about reshaping the very systems that had made me feel small. That night, I opened my inbox and found an email from Josh. Subject: Hope we can talk. It sat there like a challenge. I didn't open it. Not yet. Because before I faced him, I needed to face something else. The version of me who still thought her worth was up for debate. She was fading now. Not erased, but evolving. And this time, I was writing the rules. 3 days passed before I finally opened Josh's email. It was short, predictable. Hey Rachel, sorry about the seating thing. Tiffany said the planner messed up. Hope you're not still upset. Let's catch up soon. You've been killing it lately. Proud of you. Proud of me. I read it again, slower this time, searching for something real. It wasn't there. No acknowledgement of how deeply I'd been hurt. No mention of letting me sit in the kitchen while strangers toasted to my work. No recognition of how many times I'd swallowed my voice just to keep the peace. It wasn't an apology. It was damage control. Still, I replied. Thank you for the message. I think it's best we take some space. When I'm ready to reconnect, I'll reach out. For now, I'm focusing on things that make me feel seen. No emojis, no soft edges. Just clarity. Later that afternoon, Dylan and I met for coffee near my office. He had just returned from a conference and brought back a leather-bound journal he'd found at a little shop in Montreal. I saw this and thought of you, he said, handing it to me. On the cover, in gold lettering, were the words, "Write the story they didn't expect." I ran my thumb over the title, trying not to cry. You really get it, don't you? He smiled. I see you, Rachel. All of you. After he left, I sat in the quiet of the cafe and opened the first page. For the first time in weeks, I wrote something that wasn't a report or a strategic outline. I wrote about the girl who had once built science fair models in the garage while her family watched Josh's football games. I wrote about the woman who learned to lead from the back row, who learned not to beg for attention, but to earn respect through resilience. And then I wrote this line. If they won't give you a seat at the table, build your own, brick by brick, truth by truth. I was done explaining myself. This wasn't about revenge, it was about freedom. And I was finally free. I didn't expect the call. It was a Thursday morning, and I was mid-presentation with my leadership team when Sarah, my assistant, tapped gently on the glass door. Her face was pale. Your mother's on the line, she whispered. She says it's urgent. A dozen thoughts flooded my mind. Someone was sick, an accident, a death. That's how these calls usually come. I stepped into my office and picked up Rachel. Her voice wavered. It's Mom. I just wanted to say, we're sorry. For the wedding. For everything. I froze. I asked carefully. Your father and I. We talked after the photos came back. You looked so small in that kitchen. It wasn't right. None of it was. My mother's breath caught on the other end of the line. You were right, she whispered. And I think I always knew that. I just didn't know how to say it. You've built something amazing, Rachel. You didn't just break the mold. You designed a new one. I didn't cry. Not this time. Thanks for saying that, I said. There was more silence. Then, your father wants to invite you to dinner. Just us. No drama. No lectures, she said. I hesitated. Then said, I'll think about it. After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring out at the skyline. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that it had taken a public fallout for them to finally see me, or that part of me still longed for it. But another part of me, the newer part, just wanted peace. Not closure, just peace. The restaurant was familiar, a quiet corner bistro in Midtown my parents used to love. We hadn't eaten there together in over a decade. I arrived early, not because I was eager, but because I wanted to feel grounded. I sat by the window, ordered a sparkling water, and watched the city move outside. People with lives and destinations. I wondered how many of them had ever sat down to confront the ghosts of their past in linen-covered booths. At 6:37, my parents walked in. My mother wore soft blue, the color she always said brought out her eyes. My father looked smaller than I remembered, less like the man who once ruled our home. More like someone unsure how to speak to the daughter he'd misjudged for years. We didn't hug, but we smiled. That felt like a start. After the waiter took our order, silence stretched between us. I didn't fill it. For once, I didn't rescue them from discomfort. Finally, my father cleared his throat. I read the article in Forbes, he said. The one about your company and the mentorship program. You've built something real, Rachel. Something lasting. I know, I said simply. He nodded slowly. I used to think legacy was about bloodlines. Sons, inheritance. But watching what you did, he said. I blinked. That, I hadn't expected. My mother reached across the table. Her hand was tentative, trembling. I'm sorry we didn't see you sooner, she said. We should have listened. We should have looked. A long breath left my chest. Thank you, I said. That means more than you think. But I want to be clear. I'm not coming back to fit into your version of me. I'm not going to shrink again. You shouldn't, my father said. You're leading now, in more ways than one. Dinner was quiet after that, but it wasn't empty. It felt like the beginning of something. Not repair, exactly, but recognition. The kind of acknowledgement that doesn't erase old wounds, but helps them scar over cleanly. When we said goodbye outside, my father hugged me. It felt real. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the outsider. I felt like the architect of my own life. And I wasn't building alone anymore. I just asked them, what made you recognize me after all these years? Both my parents looked embarrassed. My father said, it was a great punishment for us that you were away from us and your brother. We came to our senses. And my mother said, we left you alone because you were always a strong, self-sufficient, quiet child. You didn't deserve this. And so I inhaled deeply. A month later, I stood at the front of a packed auditorium. The lights were warm. The air electric. A banner overhead read, Women Who Lead, Reshaping Business with Purpose. It was my first keynote speech, and somehow, the last-minute headliner after the original guest canceled. But when I stepped on stage, no one was thinking of who didn't show up. They were watching me. Rachel Myers, CEO, founder, builder of empires on her own terms. I told my story honestly. I didn't soften the betrayal. I didn't glamorize the recovery. I spoke about boundaries, about value, about choosing dignity over comfort, about how, sometimes, walking away from the wrong table creates space for the right one to be built. The applause at the end didn't fill me with pride. It filled me with clarity. This This space was mine. Not borrowed, not earned. After the event, 3 founders approached me. One had recently fired a co-founder who minimized her input in meetings. Another had walked away from a toxic investor. The third had just filed for her LLC after 10 years of being told to just stick to HR. You made it feel possible, one said. Not easy, but worth it. Back at the office, our mentorship program, the Table Project, had doubled in applicants. We brought in guest coaches, mental health advocates, and financial literacy experts. The vision was evolving. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about teaching women how to own the room. Any room. One morning, Sarah, my assistant, knocked gently. There's a package for you. Inside, a hardcover book with a handwritten note tucked inside the cover. Rachel, I watched your keynote last night. I cried through the last 10 minutes. Thank you for building something I didn't know I needed permission to want. See you at the table, Jay. I held the book to my chest. This was what healing looked like. Not erasing the past, but rising in spite of it. Not waiting to be chosen, but choosing yourself, again and again. And that auditorium, it wasn't just a room I stood in. It was the room I now owned. That weekend, Josh threw a party, for me, his sister. He raised his glass and said, to my sister, the woman who built her own empire. He had invited all our friends. And yes, my parents were there too. For the first time, I felt truly seen, truly appreciated. Josh stood in the middle of the room and gave a speech I'll never forget. All my wins, I owe to the people in this room. But Rachel, she did it all on her own. And on top of that, she had to deal with a pain-in-the-ass little brother like me. Laughter followed. I was seated at the front table, glowing with joy. Turns out, when you've been overlooked your entire life, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is step back. Set a boundary. Let people feel your absence. It gives them time to think, time to come to the right conclusions. That night, I was embraced by the very people who had once dismissed me. Sometimes I wonder how different things might have been if I'd been seen and supported all along. If I hadn't spent so many years proving I belonged. But the truth is, it's never too late. Now, Josh and I are working together on a new joint venture. And my dad, he tells everyone who'll listen that I'm the one to watch. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. Now, I want to ask you, what do you think of my story? If you were in my shoes, what would you have done?